Welcome back, everyone. It is currently day 13 of our New Year's Healthy Habits series. We're still in week 2. So week 2, our main focus is going to be crafting SMART goals. Throughout the past few days, we've looked at our first 4 pillars of lifestyle medicine. Today, we're looking at the 5th pillar, which is restorative sleep. Just like previous days, we are going to take a look at some literature, and then we'll jump into some examples of SMART goals. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to look at this article titled Sleep Disturbance and Longitudinal Risk of Inflammation, Moderating Influences of Social Integration and Social Isolation in the Coronary Artery Risk Development in Young Adults Study. So a ton of words, but let me just lay the foundation of this study. So this was taking place over a handful of cities across the United States, and the main population are young adults ages 18 to 30 years old. And these young adults were separated into 2 different groups. So one group was considered a socially integrated group, and one group was considered a socially isolated group. The way they determined these 2 groups was through a handful of studies, but essentially socially integrated means these people have large social circles, they spend lots of time with friends and family, versus socially isolated individuals maybe work from home, don't interact with too many people on the daily basis, and are considered pretty isolated. So those are the 2 study groups that we're looking at. And with all of these individuals in both groups, they had them fill out 15 different studies assessing sleep quality. So everything from total time asleep to total time in bed to overall feeling of well-restedness to number of times waking in the night. 15 different surveys, and then they gave them an overall sleep disturbance score. So the sleep disturbance score was ranked from 0 to 9, 0 meaning no sleep disturbance or relatively well-rested sleep, and 9 being the most sleep disturbance or kind of the least quality of sleep. And then within these individuals, they actually did blood draws for all the individuals in the study and evaluated some of the inflammatory markers in the bloodstream, including interleukin-6 and CRP, which is C-reactive protein. And both of these, IL-6 and CRP, are considered inflammatory mediators. So they tend to be elevated in times of stress, inflammation, or acute illness. So kind of a lot of background to this study, but let's take a look at these 2 graphs. So the graph on the left is comparing the 2 groups, the socially integrated and socially isolated groups. Along the x-axis, or the horizontal axis, is the sleep disturbance score, and along the y-axis, or vertical axis, is IL-6 blood measurements. So higher IL-6 blood measurements and higher sleep disturbance scores are more prevalent in the socially isolated group, versus social integration may have some protective value over the elevated levels of IL-6, regardless of poor sleep quality. So the interesting part about this study is it kind of ties together pillar number 5 and pillar number 6, so restorative sleep and social connectedness of lifestyle medicine. So it's really showing how these pillars are connected. So basically, as we get to poorer and poorer sleep quality or higher sleep disturbance scales, the discrepancy among the 2 groups, the social integration and social isolation groups, becomes more prevalent. So we can see that the individuals with social isolation tend to have significantly elevated levels of these inflammatory markers compared to the socially integrated group. The chart on the right-hand side of the page is essentially the same thing, but instead of looking at the IL-6 inflammatory marker, it's looking at the C-reactive protein inflammatory marker. And it demonstrates pretty similar results, showing that as the poorer our sleep quality gets, or the higher our sleep disturbance score, the greater discrepancy in these inflammatory mediators among the socially insulated or socially isolated groups. So just a very interesting study that was done in the young adult population, but can kind of give us an idea about how important sleep quality is, and also how important social integration is to our body processes and inflammatory mediators. So let's continue now on some examples of SMART goals for restorative sleep. So here's the first example. Oops, there's a typo there. It's supposed to say specific instead of Pacific. The specific goal is to go to bed by 10:30 p.m. every night. Measurable, we can track our bedtime consistency with a sleep journal. I know if people wear Apple Watches or Fitbits or smart devices to bed, sometimes these actually track what time that you fall asleep based on your heart rate and temperature patterns. So that can also be a useful tool. Achievable, we can set an evening reminder on a smartphone. So maybe evening reminder goes off at around 9:30 p.m. and it tells us, hey, we need to start our wind down routine. We need to turn down the lights, dim the lights in our house, create a dim environment for our bodies to start getting used to the fact of that we're going to be going to sleep soon. We can try and turn off our devices, limit our screen time about an hour beforehand. We can start our wind down routine, brushing teeth, and whatnot. Relevant. This is incredibly relevant, as we saw in the previous study, but as we kind of know, sleep is important for our overall feeling of well and restedness, mental health, and our activity and energy levels for the following day. So very relevant, improving our sleep quality and duration, and time-bound. We can give this a try for 30 days or however long we see fit. Example number 2 of a SMART goal. Specific, avoid screens 1 hour before bedtime. So this, again, part of creating a good wind down routine or sleep hygiene. Measurable, we can track compliance with the daily checklist. We can draw out a checklist on a piece of paper. We can just remember, something along those lines. Achievable, we can replace screens with relaxing activities like reading, listening to calming music, having conversations with friends and family. Being able to replace this kind of doom scrolling that a lot of us do 1 hour prior to bed is a really great way to do it, and makes it more achievable so we're not just bored and doing nothing the hour leading up to bedtime. Relevant, this can reduce our sleep disruption from blue light exposure. So blue light has been proven to affect our circadian rhythms, and our circadian rhythm is our natural 24-hour cycle that our body uses that basically tells us when we should be awake and when we should be asleep. So being exposed to blue light convinces our body that it's still daytime and we should be awake. So it really does affect our sleep cycle. And then time bound, we can give this a try for 4 weeks. We can give this a try for 3 days, whatever we're willing to commit to. Just an example of setting a time limit on our goals. So again, go ahead and you can use these goals. You can make your own goals. I encourage you to think about your sleep patterns, your sleep hygiene, and kind of maybe set some goals or objectives for your sleep schedule. And I'll see you tomorrow. We have our last pillar of lifestyle medicine, so our last day of our SMART goal crafting, which is for social connection. We kind of got a sneak peek to that today, but we'll take a look at another study and set some more goals tomorrow. All right, everyone, have a great day.